Okay, here we are on Wednesday, February 19th for office hours. And we're going to do things a little bit differently for the first half of the time, about 45 minutes or so. We have a guest, Dave Farina, and then Elijah is going to come on. And he and I will talk about the last couple of classes. So, hey, Jeff, bring Dave on. Dave, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Oh, man, thanks for being here.
Sure.
I really appreciate it. So you let's just say who you are, and I'll explain how you got here. I mean, your background is in biology and chemistry, and most of your work focuses on the natural sciences and math. Right?
Yeah, I would say so. I studied chemistry. I'm now a full-time science communicator, best known for my YouTube channel, Professor Dave Explains. Yeah, I tend to focus primarily on subjects close to chemistry, so biochemistry, biology, a little bit of physics, and that kind of stuff. But the channel has gotten pretty broad in terms of the academic tutorials, and then I also do a lot of debunks.
Yeah, and I think it's some of that's really what's most interesting to me. Actually, I mean, there are several things, but your channel, you're at about what is it? Professor Dave Explains, right? Is that
Yep.
it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so you're at 3.5 million subs.
Yep, just about. A little bit over.
That's an accomplishment, man.
Yeah, I mean, it took me 10 years, but yeah.
Well, so we really didn't take off until about, maybe 2 years ago is when we really started to take off. But we've kind of stalled shy of 400,000. And, it's tough. It's tough to do that. But,
Yeah.
but we're not working too hard to make it happen. But it's just whoever's drawn to the conversations gets drawn to the conversations.
Sure.
Who tends to watch who tends to want to hear your explanations for things? What age group?
For my tutorials, it's high school and undergrad students. So I cover everything from like 9th grade biology through like junior year undergrad chemistry and math. So there's a little bit of breadth in terms of the target demographic, but pretty much right in there at high school and undergrad level, math and science. And then other topics I've been branching out into, even like humanities and languages and things like that. So that would be the audience for the tutorials. The audience for the debunks is a lot wider. It's just kind of whoever is interested in that. So that would be all ages, and then not necessarily students, but just the general public as well.
And by debunking, you mean debunking pseudoscience?
Yeah, pseudoscience, science denial, charlatans, con men, etc.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, so we're gonna jump into that. But you actually have a quote on your site that it's kind of cool, where you say, I just want to raise the bar of scientific literacy in the world because I'm rooting for humanity, as it were.
I am. Yeah. I've become a little bit less optimistic over the past 10 years. I'm hovering dangerously towards pessimist territory. But I am still firmly rooting for humanity and would like to see us succeed and not perish by our own doing.
Oh man, same here. I mean, we're coming at that in a similar way. I mean, for me, it's all this sociological stuff, man. Yeah. God. Okay, so listen. So here's a couple of things. So you've gone with the debunking. You've gone on to debate a lot of folks, including people who subscribe to the idea that the Earth is flat. I don't debate people. First off, I'm not really very good at it at all. I'm from Toledo. I'm a really slow thinker. So I didn't know that until I moved to New Jersey, and that my wife's family is this kind of Central Jersey, super fast thinking and talking. And wow, man, it's really tough for me to get going. And the issues that are most interesting to me tend to be issues that have like multiple thoughtful perspectives, and in which the truth is really complex. I mean, there are certain facts, but there's a complexity to the truth. So I would say that my main goal is to sort through perspectives, right? So I want to raise, so like you, I want to, but it's similar, but I want to raise the bar of complex thinking. But I don't really want to get to right and wrong answers. Like I used to want to do that, and then I got to a certain point where I realized I'm not going to get right and wrong answers, but I can do a really good job of confusing my students so that they'll go out and hopefully try to figure some things out on their own.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's generally what people say is their minds are really active in the class, and people who follow the stream and I help them to think, or I force them to think. So that's kind of cool.
Sounds noble.
Yeah, listen, man, it may be, that's the flag it's the hill I'm gonna die on, and I'm gonna retire on. How about that?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe die on. I'll probably be doing this forever. Okay, so here's a thought. Let's go to flat Earth for a second. How do people come to have this perspective? Like, what are they seeing?
Lies on the internet. I mean, people don't sit around and come to this on their own, right? It's an insane thing to think, and it only happens if you are led down a conspiratorial rabbit hole by it's not even well crafted, content. Flat Earth is really the bottom of the barrel. I mean, there's other issues where you can be duped, where relatively, people of intermediate intelligence can be duped by very well crafted propaganda. This is not the case. Almost anybody should be able to instantly see the flaws, the gaps in logic, and the everything that's fallacious about these flat Earth videos. But I made my very first flat Earth video as part of an astronomy series without having ever looked into what flat earthers say. I just heard that there were flat earthers, and I said, well, that's ridiculous. And as the end of this astronomy series, we're going to investigate this notion, and then we'll talk about how we historically in classical Greece at the latest figured out that the earth is a sphere by basic observation of the celestial sphere and so forth. Just naked eye observations and spatial reasoning is how we figured it out. So that was that. And then once the flat earthers started attacking me, I went, all right, well, what are these idiots saying? What the hell could they possibly be presenting as arguments? And I was flabbergasted as to how stupid almost all of it is. But then I became dedicated to dissecting and dismantling all of the things that they do say. So I have various videos, responding to the Globe Busters was the first one. And then Eric Dubé is this guru that they all point to, and just going through his video of the 200 flat earth proofs and just pointing out how all of it is either misunderstanding middle school level science, or is just lying, or is just, oh, the Jews did it or something, stupid like that. So yeah, now I mean, I'm definitely at this point an expert in like flat earth culture. I know what they say. I know who their heroes are, and what the script that they regurgitate from those heroes. And it's astounding, really.
So okay. So one difference between you and I, like, and this is, it kind of goes off of what I said. I want to ask you a question then about this. I have to, because of the nature of the work that I do, I have to see everybody I encounter and every argument that I encounter as something that to each person is valid and thoughtful. So then I have to see each person then as a thoughtful, reasonable human being who somehow stepped into some rabbit hole somewhere or into a closet or something like that, right? If I don't do that, I could never just continue to have the kinds of conversations that I'm having, because I would just go nuts, right?
I don't think you've ever had a conversation with a flat earther then.
You know what? This is the point that I guess I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, I don't think I ever have. And I don't know how, as someone who flies in airplanes, I've been flying in airplanes for, 45, almost 50 years. I can't imagine what it would take for me to believe something that's just is so obviously not true.
Clearly false. Yeah. And in fact, they do not engage in dialogue as you describe. They are not people who hold a belief for some kind of well-substantiated reason and are amenable to good faith discussion of those views. They are not. They do not engage in good faith discussion. The gurus themselves are frauds who know that they're lying, and then their targets they're brick walls. I mean, you can take anything that they say, demonstrate conclusively that it is wrong or a lie or whatever it is, and it's as though you didn't say anything. It's
so these are they're going to be people who, for whatever reason, something in their childhood, their background, their current life, etc., they need to hang on to something that is going against the grain of what the vast majority of humans believe to be true.
Yeah. There's a delusional narcissism that is a primary component, mixed with a complete cognitive deficit. It's the dumbest people alive pretending to be the smartest people alive. All of science is wrong and I'm right and I know the truth. They literally see themselves as Neo in the Matrix, having awakened from the grand deception, right? Because it's not anti-vaxxers who are generally in the same reality as the rest of us, but go, oh, there's poison in the thing, right?
Yeah.
Well, all right, there isn't, but let's talk about it. They think that all of science is wrong, all of physics, all of astronomy, all of geology, all a lie. So forget okay, what the hell do geologists and physicists and astronomers do? Millions of people around the world get paid full salaries to hide under coats all day long and not do anything. And NASA and SpaceX, and they're not really doing anything. And we're wasting quadrillions of dollars to maintain this deception. So it's just, it's people who want to feel really special, and they'll believe absolutely anything to grant themselves that exalted status, because they can't really do anything with their lives. So
one of the things I remember from a conversation you were having, a flat earther was explaining to you that what they really want to see is a camera put onto a spaceship, and then that spaceship to go up into space. And your response was, SpaceX does that for every single launch. And then I was thinking of what justification they could have to not believe that, and they'd be like, "Oh, it was a fake video." And then I was thinking, okay, so then we can have maybe Elon to dismiss all the flat Earth. Elon, invite over these guys, go to where the camera will show where they are, wave to the camera, and then they can then send the spaceship up. But then they would probably be like, well, at some point they'll change from the real video that we took and then put the fake one on top of it. And I was like,
that's what we saw with the Antarctica thing, right? With the Antarctica thing, they went down there. Oh, it's green screen. No, it's not. See, look, we're flying the drone. Oh, it's a dome. Well, no, I mean, just they do not care about reality. They care about their narrative that makes them feel special, and they will pull anything out of thin air, no matter how insane, to maintain that delusion. So there's really nothing you can do. All you can do is put out content like I do, humiliating their heroes, showing how everything they believe is false, just laying it out clear as day. And they either will come to it out of their own accord when they're ready to graduate from this ridiculous playtime pretend crap that they're doing, or they won't, and they'll go to their grave that way. And there's just nothing you can do about it. It's beating them over the head with a frying pan, and they're like, "You're not hitting me. You're not hitting me. What's going on?" It's just, and you have to make peace with that at some point,
Yeah, I think that I just I shy away from confrontation. It's in my astrological chart, right? My Mars is in the 12th house. So you're probably not an astrology guy, but anyway, what that means is that the part of me that's a warrior, that's going to battle stuff, it's in like this hidden space in my life that I don't really do it. I argue and I battle, but I do it sort of invisibly, Yeah, so it's kind of delusional. That's kind of sad, I guess, in a way. So,
it's tragic.
So here, how about you, like when you get things wrong about chemistry and biology? Because you put out a lot of videos, so you get things wrong from time to time, right? How do you?
Yeah, I mean, not really. I mean, because I'm not covering like frontier science. I'm covering like what you learn in high school or undergrad. I mean, this is very well established science. Now, obviously, like, especially if you go back to my earliest content where I didn't know that my channel was going to get really huge. In my first general chemistry tutorials, I was so careless, and there are errors. There's like arithmetic errors and stuff like that, because I literally didn't even check my own math one time. Like, it's that I was that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, or I'll make a mistake, or some like a little factoid is a little wrong. Somebody might catch it. They leave a comment. I'll leave it in the comment section. Sometimes I'll even pin it like, oops, I made a slight error or whatever.
Yeah.
But this is minor stuff. This is not paradigm shifting
Got you.
knowledge. You know, I mean, it's just, everybody's human and makes mistakes. I have made more than 0 mistakes in 10 years.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Same here. Or I just say something in the wrong way, or I say something not really clear. Almost all of my stuff is in front of a room, you know, I have 800 students, right? So it's like, there's a lot going on in that moment, you know, that I can not speak clearly
a thing, or you misspeak, you use the wrong word. You know what the word is, but you use the wrong one by accident. You had a brain fart or whatever. It happens when we're people.
Yeah. And mostly, but I definitely go back to my videos, you know, maybe 10 years ago or so. And I think, we've pulled videos. I just thought, oh man, I gotta pull that out of there. I can't. I
actually have been very lazy about it because I've just been so busy with new content creation, but they recently made a change at YouTube where you can replace an existing video with a new video file while not losing the personalized URL or any of the metadata, which is huge because you can finally make corrections that you couldn't for years and years and years. And it's been over a year that I could do that, and I still haven't gotten around to. There's about a dozen videos that I really need to do that for, especially the early Gen Chem, where like one of them I say molecular orbitals instead of hybrid atomic orbitals. It's a big error. Like it's so big an error that I will go in, and even though it's 10 years ago me talking, I'll dub in hybrid atomic orbitals, and it won't match my mouth, and I'm still going to do that because it's such a big error that I need to do that. And I haven't gotten around to it. It's on my to-do list.
All right. Yeah. All right. Well, Jeff, keep that in mind about it. I mean, we sometimes will cut things out, but we haven't added anything. Hey, so let me just walk you through something just for myself, right? And I just want to hear how you would think about it. So my wife and I have recently been talking about getting the shingles vaccine. Okay. And we're debating it, and partly mostly debating it out of quite frankly laziness, right? I mean, just got to get there, got to get the CVS or drugstore and do it. Nobody close to me has had shingles. I know it's really painful, but nobody close to me has had it, so I'm not particularly motivated. I don't want the side effects of the vaccine, if there are any, if I'm going to have any side effects, but also, like, I don't understand the vaccine. Like, I'm smart enough to know, like, I trust vaccines. Look, I don't distrust vaccines, but I have a healthy skepticism of the entire pharmaceutical and medical industry, right? And so my wife was trained in really theoretical statistics, you know, so sometimes we dig into some of this stuff and she's just like, whoa, man. But I also know I don't really understand it, and I know
like
it's
you
not
don't know
live
generally how vaccines work, like in
no,
general.
the shingles vaccine. I know that this particular one's not a live virus, you know, so I'm like, okay, I got to get myself to the drugstore and make it happen, but I haven't. And there's that part of me that's I'm sort of all over the map as a thoughtful person, but yet I haven't done it. And again, that there's a tiny voice in me of skepticism of any vaccine, like putting anything in my body, even though I understand them basically. You know?
I mean, you don't have to take every substance. You don't have to get every vaccine. I mean, you're calculating a risk there. If the risk is infinitesimal that you will encounter it, then it's not really urgent to get. I mean, I don't get I usually get the flu vaccine just because, I mean, right now I'm still like getting over a cold. I don't know if it was the flu or not. I did get the flu vaccine this year, but it's just, flu is very common. A lot of people get that. So it makes sense to get that vaccine. Shingles, I mean, you're talking about it as though it is dramatically different mechanistically. I'm not familiar with the mechanism of that one, but I assume it's either an attenuated virus or an isolated viral particle. But I don't believe that it is in any way dramatically different from any other vaccine. All of these vaccines go through clinical trials. They're very well tested, especially ones that have been around forever. So, and side effects are well documented. You can definitely know from your own personal history or through testing with a medical professional if you are especially prone to these adverse reactions. Right? They can happen. That's why they tend to monitor you there for 15
Yeah,
minutes. after you
I usually
the
get
vaccine.
them. So that's like,
Okay.
yeah, I usually get
Well,
adverse reactions. Not really bad, but just
then
enough to go like, ah,
yeah.
man, God,
Well,
what's
then
going on?
something that you are at extremely low risk of getting, that may be totally fine for you to not get that vaccine, right? We don't have to all get every single vaccine. I mean, there are ones that are more urgent than others. Like the smallpox vaccine was so urgent
Yeah.
that was the
Yeah.
last time in human history that we had compulsory vaccines. There are countries that forced their citizens to get vaccinated. And I know that there's a huge portion of the American public that thinks that COVID vaccines were this unprecedented tyranny and all. No,
Yeah.
they weren't. No, they weren't. They weren't compulsory. The smallpox vaccine was compulsory in many countries. And guess what? Now we don't have smallpox anymore. So
Yeah.
I think it was a good idea. If you want to make the argument that it's some enormous governmental overreach and that you'd rather have smallpox around, I guess you can make that argument. But it's yeah, I just, some things are more urgent than others. Smallpox, polio, these are absolutely devastating and debilitating, and they were widespread in a time long enough ago that I fear that people my age and younger don't appreciate how important those vaccines were, because they were never alive in a time where those diseases existed. But polio came back in Gaza. I think that polio could come back in other low-income areas, and honestly, under this administration, could come back in America, which would be bonkers. So
yeah, well, we saw the rise of measles, again.
yeah, measles made a bit of a comeback. Yeah.
I wanted to point out that for some people, shingles might affect people in one way, some people in another. I would highly recommend it though, because my mom got it super, super young, like in her 30s, like late 30s. And it was like 2 weeks of her just like bedridden because the pain was just excruciating. And she tells everybody who's at the proper age, like, go get vaccinated. It's so worth it.
Proper
but again,
age meaning younger or older?
What was that?
Proper age to get the vaccine meaning younger or older?
Older. Like, I think you have to wait until
shingles.
you're like 55 or 60 or something to get the
Got it.
shingles vaccine.
Yeah.
So she's like, as soon as her like older friends, or like when her parents, when she got it, she was like, you have to go get vaccinated because this is awful.
Yeah.
But again, Sam, maybe you do have more adverse effects. So yeah, you could definitely make the analysis and decision for yourself. But personally, from seeing someone who went through it, I recommend it. It's awful.
Well, but this is the thing, I happen to believe in science, I mean, I don't, I'm in at a large research university. Many of my closest colleagues are scientists, they're natural scientists, they're people like you. It's not political. People outside the institution, outside of the academy, they have this idea that politics just sort of weaves its way through everything in a big research school like this, and it absolutely does not. Well, it does. I mean, there are certain places in which it does.
I mean,
but not
nothing in the
outcome.
world is without politics. But yes, it doesn't it's not this overarching thing that determines every aspect, right? You can't get funding if it's not like what the Pentagon wants or something. It's like,
right.
Chemists are just doing reactions, man. They're just like, oh, let's see if I can make that molecule. Oh, cool, I made it. Now let me see if I can make this one. Like people with zero laboratory experience or any experience studying any science, even forget everything in high school, didn't take any science in college if they went to college at all. They just have no idea what scientists do, and they think that they do, and that's a gigantic problem. Yeah.
Well, this is like the flat Earth thing, right? So the equivalent is me sitting back and imagining that the flat Earth people who subscribe or believe in, and in this idea that the Earth is flat, are people that just randomly came upon this, and they're just kind of enjoying making a good argument. But then suddenly now, for the first time, I'm talking to you, someone who actually has been inside the community, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
And I say, oh, wait, hang on, it's way more than that. Okay, now I gotta take it serious. I got to see it more like that, as a sociologist would see a cult, right? Which is very difficult to get out of, right? Because
try telling a Scientologist like, no, Lord Xenu and Thetans aren't real. Those are just lies that somebody told you and you believe them.
Yeah.
see how well that works, right? I mean,
And
tell
right,
Tom Cruise
no,
that.
yeah, because you got to look back in your life and say, God, I really believe that. Like, what kind
Yeah,
of a knucklehead am I? I mean,
yeah,
there are
and
things that I used to think that I look back and I'm embarrassed that I think them, or I talked about them in class, or I said certain things in class, and I'm like, oh
sure,
my
yeah,
God,
yeah.
how'd you say that? You know?
We all have that, but if we're intelligent and critical thinking, those things tend not to be abject falsehoods, but just
Yeah,
like
that's
slightly
right.
misled worldviews. You know what I mean?
That's
Like
right.
when I was a teenager and maybe into my early 20s or even mid 20s, I kind of still held on to like Democrat good, Republican bad. Right. And then when I
Yeah,
grew up a little bit, I was like, oh, wait, they both suck a lot. Republicans are
yeah.
worse, but Party also is, I became more sophisticated in my worldview. But yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, I think that's well, that's my one of the things that I'm always trying to sort of hold the line, not really heavily critiquing any way of seeing things, any way of understanding the world, but always encouraging people to try to imagine themselves in a different place, right? That like inside of a university where you're really trying to get to the truth. Again, I'm going to say most of the time. I mean, but the problem, if I say that, the vast majority of the time, right? Because the problem is we all have blind spots, and scientists have blind spots, and does whether it's social science or natural science, or it doesn't matter. But those kinds of blind spots are not the ones that get us into deep trouble, where we start
Yeah.
suddenly we make an argument for vaccines, and then we turn around one day and realize, oh my God, the whole field of science is wrong.
Right.
Not
I
that
mean,
kind of stuff.
no, not even close. I mean, I think that the way you were framing it almost it's like when you say the word truth, like scientists are not looking for truth with a capital T. They're
That's
probing a
right.
particular question. They're saying, what is the composition of this mineral? What is the structure of this compound? How can I like they're asking very, very specific questions, and they're using the instruments that will give you the answers to those questions. And when you get the answers, those are the answers to the best of our knowledge, right? They're I think that people who have never done science tend to view scientists as these people that are trying to get this, ultimate philosophical truth about like if there is a God or not, or any of these. It's like they're just
Right. That's
doing
right.
science, right? If
Yeah.
some of their
Yeah.
science threatens your ideological worldview, that's a you problem, right? You have to deal with that and figure out how you're going to make your worldview fit the body of
Yeah.
scientific knowledge that we now possess. And a lot of people choose to just say that's not real, and I'm going to continue believing what I believe. But that's not on scientists, right? That's up to you.
Well, one thing that's different for us is that very few people can just have random opinions about the kinds of things that you do in your videos. For example, like
Yeah,
they're not going to have talk suddenly be having formulating thoughtful hypotheses about organic chemistry. And like it's not, so they're not going to be able to say, hey Dave, like you're a knucklehead because here's the way it works. Whereas
yeah,
in my world, everybody has an opinion about everything that I talk about every single day.
sure.
And then the idea is that, well, everyone has an opinion. I got that. And so every opinion is valid. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm going to listen to it at some level, but you got to understand, for me, this is something I've been doing for 45 years, very thoughtfully, like really thoughtfully, so I
Yeah.
have,
And I've
I,
heard somebody say the thing that you just said 100 times. You know,
yeah. And it's like, okay. And I'm going to respond to it, but you need to understand, I'm not responding out of this blind ideology. I'm responding out of the fact that I've wandered around in this dark forest for many, many years. And I've come to be able to turn on a few light bulbs and see my way in this complex web of pathways. And but I'm not trying to convince you that to think like me, but I'm going to help you, and that's something that you really, unless you venture into some of these other worlds of the pseudoscience, you don't have to deal with that so much, I would think.
yeah, that's true. I mean, yeah, there are people who don't quite understand things, and then there are people who
Mhm.
are ideologically committed to knowing wrong things. Those are kind of two different categories, right? The former is like
Yeah.
ignorant, but potentially open to learning new things if you can inspire them and help them understand why this might be good knowledge to learn. Like, oh, I guess I didn't see it that way. Maybe I will learn a little bit about, vaccines or whatever it is. Whereas flat earthers are just like, they know wrong things, and that is the most important thing in the world to them. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the other? What's another area of pseudoscience? Let's say, if we call it that, that's really, do you find particularly dangerous?
I mean,
Flat Earth. But wait, let me interrupt you really fast.
Sure.
Flat Earth is not really dangerous. I mean,
Well,
there's nothing that can.
it's not it's not in the sense that it's so stupid that relatively few people fall for it. There's probably 5 to 10,000 flat earthers in the entire world. Genuinely, once you get rid of the bot accounts and things like that. It is dangerous in the sense that all science denial and all pseudoscience is dangerous because it's a tapestry where it's all interrelated. So if you fall for flat earth, you fall for every other conspiracy. And conversely, if you fall for something that's a little more surface, it's a pipeline that'll bring you down to all the other things. It's a mosaic and it's all interrelated. But I would say, I mean, the most tangibly dangerous stuff is medical stuff, where people are convinced to forego medical treatment in favor of alternative, whatever you want to call it. And then in terms of, politically, there's a lot of science denial linked to the rise of Christian nationalism. And so some of it is your really classic creationism / intelligent design arguments, where it's sort of entry level, trying to get religion taught in public school science classes. That's sort of the beginning of the erosion of church and the separation of church and state. And then that's obviously linked to, rollback of women's rights, reproductive rights, things like that. So I do, because that's so rooted in the biological sciences, I'm pretty uniquely suited to tackle all of that stuff, whether it's everything from young earth creationism to intelligent design. There's sort of a spectrum there in terms of the complexity of the talking points that are offered. Some young earth creationism talking points are so mind-numbingly stupid that you don't even know what to do with them, whereas intelligent design is very cleverly crafted propaganda that is sophisticated enough that you must dive into the primary scientific literature to debunk it, because they lie about the primary literature. So you have to then go into that deeply scientific sphere to do battle with them. So I do both and everything in between.
So okay. So these are the kinds of debates or kind of things that I don't wade into. I'm sure I have a lot of people who listen to my class who believe in intelligent design, and that's fine for me. I don't, life is complex. You can believe one thing and not another thing, and it's all good. Just keep moving your mind.
Sure, but I want to be clear that this is intelligent design is not a deism, right? You can believe in God and accept science. Intelligent design is a buzzword that represents a Christian propaganda movement that deliberately distorts science and lies.
Changes science, that needs to change the logic of science and the logic of the laws of nature in order for it to make sense.
It does that, but then it also very specifically and deliberately lies about scientific research. It's a propaganda campaign. So there's ways that you can go about exposing that do not require a lot of understanding of science, right? You can it's as simple as going like, hey, this guy said that this paper says this. Well, here I'm showing you the paper. It says the opposite of that. And by the way, here's an email from the primary author of the paper specifically saying that guy's lying about his paper. Right. Whether or not you understand what's in the paper, the primary author just said that guy's lying about my paper.
Yeah.
Right.
I got that.
So
I hear
these
that.
are things that you can do that make it abundantly clear the dishonesty.
So one of the things in your world, though, that of kind of the natural science work that you're doing, is that somewhere someone has very often has lied. Sometimes it's just they've misunderstood something that somebody said, like Newtonian physics or something. I don't know, right? But at some point, someone has probably lied, and then they start building on that lie.
Yeah, I mean, the people who set these cultural trends into action tend to be charlatans. They tend to be people who are deliberately crafting a dishonest narrative then the people who fall for it often are just they fell for it, right? They're not malicious, right? The purveyor of it is malicious, and they're trying to cash in by spreading, a narrative that people enjoy, and profit off of that.
You.
But then people fall for it,
Yeah, and all of us feel good when we think we're special in some way, right? Like I've got some little angle on the truth that nobody else has.
They can't trick me. I know the truth about such and such, right? It's a good feeling.
Well, we're all just these little cogs in this massive machine called society, right? So if I can somehow feel special and stand out, like that's good. And I listen, I've had that my whole life. There've been little tiny things where I grab onto, I get that. I understand it and nobody else does, or very few people do. And then of course I often come to find out that I don't understand it. And then I'm an idiot, and, but sometimes this stuff, the New York Times has this article, just yesterday, I think it was, or a couple of days ago, about, HIV, this conversation of the skepticism about HIV causing AIDS, and how 2 decades ago so many people were questioning it, and the South African president Thabo Mbeki started questioning it, and he banned the antiretroviral drugs, and they estimate that about 300,000 people in South Africa died as a result of that.
Yeah.
And
so that would be the top of what you were saying earlier, the most dangerous science now, where you can quantifiably measure human deaths as a result. That's pretty up there.
Yeah, and he went down the rabbit hole. He and his health minister, they all went down this rabbit hole of believing this, and people were like, "Oh my God, please stop!" And South African
somebody
scientists
assassinate this prick. Yeah.
Well, this is the thing. Like that, this is where the stuff gets. Yeah, it does get really dangerous. Hey, let me ask you this question, and then we're almost finished. But I think this will be. Where is your skepticism in science? Here, I just want to go back first and say one thing. Just the way I see the wheel of science. We come up with these hypotheses about. We want to understand causality. And so we come up with these hypotheses about the causality between variables. And then we either reject the hypothesis or we fail to reject the hypothesis. We never accept the hypothesis because presumably the wheel of science never stops turning. So you never prove anything. You never accept anything as true. You're just, if you're really a good scientist, like this is just the way your brain is naturally wired. You reject your hypothesis or you fail to reject it, and you fail to reject it because the wheel is going to keep turning. Now,
in a sense, right?
Like gravity.
Sure, you keep subjecting the hypotheses to further and further testing, and if it continues to pass every single test, which it can do to an absurd degree, right? Then you would say that it is consistent beyond reasonable doubt, right? There are theories that are consistent beyond reasonable doubt, but proof. See, I think that lay people don't understand that proof is in the domain of math and logic only. Right? We don't prove things in science, but there are things that, for the way that lay people speak, if we want to use the way that they understand words, yes, we've proven that atoms exist. How the hell could we do chemistry in the sophisticated degree that we do if atoms didn't exist? So we didn't prove them with using the rigidity of what the term actually means, because we can only prove that a triangle as the angles add up to 180 or something like that in this hypothetical imaginary perfect math land, which the natural world is not like that. But we have proven that gravity, general relativity is consistent beyond reasonable doubt. Atomic theory is consistent beyond reasonable doubt. Germ theory of disease is consistent beyond reasonable doubt. So when people, virus deniers and these kinds of things, you really are it's just a complete fantasy that flies in the face of hundreds of years of very rigorous science. It's just, it's bananas.
Of this wheel just spinning around and around and around. And I teach my students this: you reject your hypothesis, or fail to reject it, just to embed in their brains, man. Like you're not, you're not proving this relationship between income and education or whatever some simple thing is. Like you don't, just stop thinking like that. Start thinking that you're
making a case that it is more and more likely that there is the correlation that you believe that is there.
Yep. And there's somehow linked to causality, but really, honestly, don't think that way, because you haven't been in it long enough to be able to make those kinds of statements.
Yes, for broad sociological phenomena, you should always hang on to, because these are exceedingly complex systems. It's not like a proton and a neutron and an electron, right? These are far simpler systems, so yeah. Yeah.
But something like HIV causing AIDS, this is now we're in a whole different world of hurt here, man.
Yeah.
Like,
how could antivirals work if the mechanisms they're based on weren't real?
Yeah.
Explain that to me. Like, it's just,
Yeah. Well, and then this is it, right? This is where people on the outside of the science community, and again, which is the vast majority of people, right? You just have got to take time. Just like, for example, for me with the shingles vaccine, it was one day I said, look, you're not going to decide to do this or not do this if you don't do a deep dive into the shingles vaccine. What's the likelihood you're going to get shingles? If you get it, what's the likelihood it's going to happen? Like data. All these kinds of things. Yeah, look at the data. So I had to take an hour of my life to do a deep dive into the shingles vaccine and that's the only way I'm going to come up.
Still hear me, right?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yep.
Okay, I'm just going to switch to the camera mic.
Yeah, so that's the only way I'm going to make it work, if I take that deep dive. But so many people don't, so this is one thing after another. It's like, you got to do it.
Very few people do, in fact.
But this is the work that you're doing on your channel, which is awesome, giving people very simple ways to understand very complex things.
I want to reduce the effort required, right? You want to get, here's one video, like I did one video on vaccines. Here's all of the lies you heard about vaccines. Here's the Andrew Wakefield MMR autism debacle. Here's this thoroughly debunked. Here's here are all of the most common anti-vaccine talking points, debunked nice and neatly in one little half-hour video. Just please watch this one. And
and then if you want to critique the video, then use this video as a jumping off point to critique the video, right? Don't just go and take some other person just that you find out on the internet, but critique what is actually happening, what is being said in that spot, by you, for example. I think that's the same thing for me. It's like, well, you can critique it, but you got to critique what I'm saying, like, don't just critique what you imagine that I'm saying, because you don't know really what I'm saying. Yeah.
And in fact, most of my detractors don't even watch my content. They just get triggered by the first 3 seconds and then start yelling. And
yeah, my wife had that the other day. She made a video, and my God, man, the people that it's just, she put MAGA in the title, and what she was actually doing was critiquing someone who made a comment in one of her videos that they would never listen to someone who's MAGA, right? Who's part of the MAGA movement. So she's saying, like, come on, man, what we just because someone wears a hat and supports Donald Trump, you're not going to listen to anything they say? That's really crazy, right? But
I would listen to them recommend the best barbecue restaurant in town or something like that. I would listen to them about trivial things.
Listen to anything, whatever the case is. The point being, like, she was critiquing that, but the comments were just, it's like no one listened to anything that she said. It was just attack. And as she's a woman, attacking what she looks like. I mean, that was the biggest thing. Just everything was about what she looks like, and like, oh my God, it's just. Yeah, this is a hard thing, man. Okay, well, listen.
That's the example that Trump sets, right?
Yeah, well, this is
life, ugly as a dog. Like, that's how he behaves.
Well, listen.
That's why here's the way it is, right? People feel empowered to behave the way they want to behave because their president does.
Well, what I would say about that in a more, I'm not going to say more thoughtful way, but the way I would say that is, President Trump he generates a lot of that just in the way that he's talking. And
Yep.
so, it really does elevate or increase some of the mean-spirited negative commentary. There's plenty of it on the left, man. There's plenty of it on the left. So it's equal. I look for it's equal amounts, right? But Trump there's just a unique way of him just being mean.
Yeah, I don't think it's equal.
Man. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's not. We don't need meanness right now, man. We have too many guns in society to have that kind of meanness. So let's stay away from it. Anyway, I try to not. I don't go down there. All right. Well, listen, man. Thanks for the conversation. It's really interesting. I learned a few things, and I will. Yeah, I'll watch some of your. I've watched a couple of your science videos. I mean, I really appreciate how you make things really super simple in your animations and different things. Yeah. And I want to learn more science too. Yeah. Well, listen. So thanks. I appreciate it.
You bet.
All right. Be well. All right, man. Here we go.
That was cool.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, well, it's interesting to hear the science, right? And truth and where we're at and what we're doing and what we're trying to figure out. And he certainly, though, I'm sure creates more enemies than I do, just nature of the fact that, well, he argues with people. I don't argue with anybody. So, he's willing to do that. Yeah. I don't do that. I don't.
I was thinking back to the preacher versus teacher debates. It's like, those weren't really debates. Those were just Sam and the Willard preacher chatting, and Sam being like, "Yeah, I can see why you think that. I don't agree with it, but I can see why you think that."
Even very rarely even said I didn't agree with it. So we have a preacher on campus. He's Gary Cattell. He's been around for as long as I've been here, for 30 plus years. And he's funded, there's a church, funds him. And he goes on campus every day, 5 days a week, even sometimes in the summertime. And he stands on the steps of this building, the Willard building, and he just preaches all day. And when classes are changing, he's really, really, there he is. He's really active in preaching. And nice guy, really nice guy. Has changed his mind on a number of things. He's actually Greek Orthodox. He used to be just straight up evangelical, kind of non-denominational Christian, and then some Greek Orthodox Christian just converted him, man. They just kept challenging him, and Gary did the research, and one day, and they over time realized, you know what, I got to follow Greek Orthodoxy, which I thought was pretty cool. But in any case, people, he says a lot of really extreme things, and as a way to just kind of grab people's attention and so on. But when you talk to him, he's very thoughtful, and he's really smart. He's really good at debating. And for me as a professor, I always tell my students, hey, if you want to hone your debating skills, go debate Gary, because you'll probably lose to him most of the time, at least in this world of biblical stuff, right? But don't just walk away saying that you're an idiot, because he's a really, really, really thoughtful person. So anyway, we were raising money for Haiti, and one of our student groups, we broke up my big class into groups, and each group had to do something. Well, 2 different semesters groups sponsored a debate between me and Gary. And but I couldn't debate him, because I really once he started talking, he's very thoughtful. He's really smart and very interesting, and telling his story and how he got to where he is. And I'm like, well, there's nothing to debate here. I actually just want to listen to him. And so for people who are Christian, and there were a lot of, 2 different times, the room was really packed, and the people in the room that were Christian, I thought it was really good if they got an opportunity to listen to Gary being thoughtful in his Christianity. And there wasn't anything I was going to say that was anti-Christian, or I didn't have anything that, I mean, I'm not interested in that. Making somebody not Christian, you know, if you're a Christian, then I want you to be a better Christian. So I was kind of critiquing Gary at certain places to be like, hang on, that's I got a better Christian argument than that, you know, kind of thing. But anyway, yeah, it wasn't a debate. It was me. It was just us having conversations.
Yeah.
And people were disappointed. Yeah, they wanted me to argue with him. Some people were. They wanted me to argue with him. I'm like, I'm not going to argue with Gary. I like Gary. Yeah.
TikTok said Elijah became a voice-only guy. He stepped away from his desk. He'll be back in a few minutes. And the reason I'm a voice-only guy is because I've tried to plug my webcam into my computer, and every time I do it, there's something that happens with like memory associated with something, and it fails every single time, and my camera just flashes. And I have a screen that sits on a desk that are the same exact size, so I can't open up my laptop that has a webcam. It's like at a weird angle where y'all be looking at my chins.
So the irony, Mr. Hamill, is that, you know, you are the video conferencing guru.
I know, and I have equipment that doesn't work.
Dude, like, you can get a webcam for $30, man. You know what I mean? Like, come on, this is absurd.
I also sit in my living room, and I want to have like a green screen behind me so I could like put myself on the Haitian beaches or something.
All right, okay. Well, here, the idea being that you can be an expert and still be a knucklehead at the same time.
True.
So that's so when I say something really knuckleheaded in class, recognize that, you know, it's okay. Elijah, how are you?
You are muted, my friend.
That was good. That was a cool discussion. And I also relate with the knucklehead, like saying knucklehead statements, or I'm sure that you said that you were like this in class, but even when I'm debriefing with students, like after a dialogue, I try not to think too much about like evaluating myself while I'm in debrief with the things that I'm saying, because I'm like speaking with good faith, but you never know how much what's being taken in, or if you could have said something better. So I started to like look over my debrief videos to like watch myself and see like, okay, where could I have been better, or where was I being a knucklehead? You know? So I relate with that.
Well, I'm looking at some of the chat, and I'm realizing that Dave has a lot of detractors in the world, and it's kind of interesting for me. I think that I wanted to have a conversation with him mostly because of the people who subscribe to Flat Earth. And well, first off, it's just different. And you listened to the conversation, right, Elijah?
Yep.
Yeah. So it's very different with, you know, I'm in the world of sociology. Anybody can make you can make a lot of really outside the box arguments about various things. And you know, it takes a lot to get in there and deconstruct them. And it takes a while to be like, well, you know, if you see it that way, then you got to all these things. It's just very, very complicated. Whereas in the world of science, it's easy. You can at least point to something in the natural world to be like, hey, look, man, there's causality here that's real. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, you did what I was going to ask. I was going to ask for you to compare the world of sociology to something different, so we could see what's distinct about the subjectiveness or the variety that you could get in the world of sociology.
Yeah. Well, what it does for me is it keeps me really humble, right? Because for me to be a really a wise sociologist, I have to know so many things. You know, like the other day, you know, I talk about crime and culture and crime and race and crime and ethnicity and that kind of thing, right? Like, okay, I know a fair amount about this, you know what I mean? I mean, because that's something that I've been thinking about for 30 plus years. But I have a colleague who just became one of Penn State's like a distinguished professor status, right, at Penn
Mhm.
State. This is all he studies, man. That's all he studies. He's written books and dozens upon dozens of articles and like not hundreds, and that's all he does, man. He
In what
consults.
particular field?
Race crime, particularly violent crime, but crime and victimization, right? And how it's connected to or associated with race, ethnicity, and culture. Okay. So it's just like, you think about this, right? Like, that's all he does.
Right. Just
And so
constantly making connections to
making
different things. And
connections, knowing things that for me, as much time as I put in, which is far more than the average person. Okay,
right,
far more than the average person. Like you,
right.
just you or anybody your neighbors on either side of you, whatever. Like, hey, what do you think about crime and race or something? You know, and you think like everybody has an opinion on it, right?
They
Everybody seems to
respond,
have an opinion.
they're like, I've been thinking about this far more than the
Yeah.
average person. I'm like, oh, you need to talk to Sam.
Yeah. But for me, I feel like man, compared to my colleague, I'm very ignorant, man.
Well,
It's
I thought it was a really cool quote when you spoke to when you were referencing making connections, like your colleague. I thought it was really cool the connection that you made when during the discussion you were talking about when you were talking about flat earthers, and one of your
people with a flat earth ideology. Yeah.
people with a flat earth ideology, and you were
Yeah.
wondering like what's underneath that, like that makes
Yeah.
them feel like they need to go against like the grain, like something that may have
Yeah.
happened in childhood, or and I thought that was a really cool like examination of like, well, what is that connected to? What is that like what is that connected to? Which
Well,
I thought was
so here's
interesting.
the thing. He would say, well, it's just a stupid idea. It's just really stupid. I just would never say that. I don't ever say that. Right. I just have
Right.
trained myself, even if I think it in my mind, which I rarely do. I've trained myself to not even think that. If you say like, hey, I think that birds aren't real or whatever, or like that's a farcical movement that's out there, right? This guy that has this whole campaign that birds are actually all these mechanical, these
Actually,
robots, right?
they're
It's
really
pretty well.
raptors.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, look
Yeah.
up birds aren't real, right? It's actually pretty cool. So this guy did this, right? Okay, so you flat earth, I've trained myself to not be, oh man, you gotta be an idiot to think that. Like, I just don't think it's not part of my thinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
It, what
yeah.
inspired that training? What were you seeing as the consequences of starting to make conclusions that way?
Well, I think it's part of being a sociologist where things are so up in the air, like about so
Mm,
many things, right? Like I
mm,
don't
right.
yeah,
So,
there's you don't get the truth of the capital T at all. You don't even hardly get the truth of the small t. You just like, you just wander around it a little bit and hope that once in a while you accidentally step in it. And so
right.
I had to just kind of give that up. And I did think I would have those thoughts when I was a graduate student or a very young PhD that I
Right.
thought, I knew something here, right? And so I would think I'd hear somebody say something and then say, oh, yeah, that's stupid or that person's stupid. And I'm like,
That makes
nah.
sense. And you said that before. You were like, once I started to realize all the things that I don't know is the most. So that's like what inspired. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
well, I can't. I need to
Yeah.
train myself to stop because there's so many things that I've missed that I could be
Yeah.
connecting
Yeah. Yeah.
the dots with.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hey, by the way, Godseed, I'm looking at your your comment there. Well, the problem is, y- I think that I don't know what you're talking about, but the you
I don't
the
either,
evidence,
actually.
yeah, if you have evidence about anything, and I think this is like the Earth being flat, right, or HIV doesn't cause AIDS. Um, Jeff, you're muted. You're not muted.
Sorry. Oh, I
Yeah.
wasn't muted?
You were not muted. Yeah.
Oh,
we can hear whatever. All right. So
Yeah.
anyway, I think that the problem is you have to make an argument. It's not enough to say I have the evidence. Like, you have to take the evidence and you have to really lay it out very carefully, especially in the world of science. So even if the Earth is flat, well, you got to be able to make the argument. And some people think that they have, but you gotta be willing. It's like, this is the Elijah. I don't know if you caught this, but at the end, I mean, like, you make some kind of hypothesis. You make a statement about, I think that people who are taller are more likely to make more money, because people respect people who are taller than people who are shorter. And so it makes sense that they're going to make more money. Okay, well,
Right.
you got to go out and you got to test that. And you got to
Right.
figure out how you're going to measure that. And then
Right.
you got to not only measure it one way, but you got to measure it in 5 different ways. And then you have to just keep testing that hypothesis, but you never accept it. If you have your data and your data comes back and says, yeah, it looks like people who are taller make more money, you don't say, I accept my hypothesis. You say, I fail to reject my hypothesis. You're always got to be prepared to reject the hypothesis. Whatever it is that I want to make connections to, I need to be prepared to reject that I'm going to be
Right.
wrong.
Right.
It's
Because
just my idea. Yeah.
to find all the missing gaps.
Yeah, you got to
Right.
find,
Right.
yeah, you have to find all the missing gaps. So I'm going to okay, it looks like I don't have to reject it here. Okay, so I'm going to fail to reject it. Okay. I'm not going to reject it. I'll fail to reject it, but that doesn't mean I accept it. I got to now try to go a little further with it. Maybe I didn't
Yep.
measure, height and wealth or income or something. Maybe I didn't measure it correctly. So like, I can't accept that because maybe it's not right. So I got to go back at it. And that's what we do in the world of science. We're just, in social science in particular, but all science, we're just endlessly spinning around this wheel, trying to perfect our measures and our way of understanding things. And so going back to God's seed, it's like, well, if you, why is it so far-fetched that industrial pollution could possibly do weird things to frogs? Yeah.
Wait, you just transitioned.
Yeah.
Did you
No,
see
I'm
something
looking at
from
that.
Got
Yeah,
it,
I
got
see
it.
something in the chat. It's like, well, it's not far-fetched that industrial
that
pollution could do that.
that
But at
whole
the
thing
same
was
time,
the original claim was that fluoride is a dangerous chemical that's in our water, and we know that because fluoride that's in water is turning frogs gay, so therefore it makes humans gay. But the new type of chemical that's being stated in the chat that's not fluoride is maybe a renegotiation to try to make it seem like it is something within our water or whatever. But really the reason why frogs change their gender is based on the population needs of that group of frogs. Has nothing to do with what's in the water necessarily.
hang on. Okay, but here, I'm going to respond to all this, right? So here's what you do. This is what I do when I come up against something like this. I say, okay, let me assume that I'm wrong. Let me try to convince myself that I'm wrong. And then I start going into all of the science, and then the science behind the science. And then I study. I take one chemical and then I dig into the chemical and I just go further. What is this chemical? And what is this? And what is that? And I don't read. And what I don't do is I don't read all of the papers that are citing all of the same other papers. Like all the research or whatever it is citing the same things that everybody else is citing. Like, no, I got to keep looking further. It happened to me the other day when I was looking at something and I kept saying, wait a minute, here's this number that I keep coming across, but I'm not seeing the origin of this number. It doesn't make any sense. Like I can't get to the origin. And every footnote that I got to was pointing me to another place that gave this particular number. it was the number of people in poverty or something. But everyone just kept footnoting a different person who was footnoting a different person who was just giving the same number, but I could never get to how that number was actually calculated and measured. And so because I couldn't do that, I couldn't believe in the number. I'm like, well, I don't know what this is from then. I have no idea. So therefore I can't talk about it as though it's true.
Okay, so everyone was getting the same number from different sources, but there was never a source of how the number was calculated.
They're never
It
the
was
source. It was just like one after another, after another, after another, man. And it's
right.
like, hang on, this is pseudoscience here. This is not the real deal. Now, mind you, the number made sense, right, at some level, but but when I dug around, I thought, okay, and I'm realizing, hey, these are all really journalists, and some were researchers who were just kind of throwing a number out there. But so it's one of these things. It's very complicated. I'm a science skeptic, so I don't like. For example, when I go to the dentist, they say, "Do you want your fluoride treatment?" And I'm like, "Hang on a minute, man. I haven't had a cavity in 20 years. Okay."
Right.
Do I want why do I want a fluoride treat? Do I need a fluoride treatment? Like, so I'm not thinking, I haven't done research on fluoride. Okay. And I've not done a deep dive into fluoride. So like, I don't
Right.
know. Right.
So the skepticism, the controversy about fluoride and whether it's good or toxic.
Dude, back
Is that what you're talking
50
about?
years ago, but when I was a kid and they were doing fluoride, I was still asking myself, not a kid, but when I was, in college, like 20 years old, I'm like, hang on, what is this thing called fluoride? Like, what is that? Like, what is it? Okay, it's in the water. All right, that's fine. I'm drinking it. So, but like back in the day when dentists were first introducing this to me, I have a natural skepticism to say, wait, hang on, do I need this? Like, what's it going to do? And then I'm asking the dentist, I'm like, well, tell me about fluoride. What have you done? What have you read? Like, what have you read in the science journals? He's like, well,
Yeah.
it's recommended. I'm like, well, who recommended it? Like, who's recommending this? Right now, I understand this isn't just random science. So this is what Dave and I were talking about. The scientists, we're not just sitting in these dark offices or labs somewhere trying to dupe people and kill them. We're not, because of we're mixing chemicals together and we're coming up and we're going to just impose this on people.
Like, I
And
just
we're
want to
going
be
to,
published.
get published. And when get some patents and like, I'm going to make a lot of money off of this. Some people, it's like, that's
Right.
really not what's going on in the world of science, man. Okay.
Right.
It's okay in some corners of the universe and places. Sure, it happens, but that's just not average everyday science. Okay, but that doesn't mean there isn't politics involved, right? Why do some communities say like, no, we're not going to put fluoride in water, and other communities say yes? Okay, well, somewhere people are making different determinations, right? So once I get to that point, then I say, all right, to my dentist, I'm like, well, you haven't done a deep dive into this. Well, of course I know you haven't. You're a dentist. Like, it's not what you do. You know what I mean? Like, you're busy doing everything that you do. So it takes so much to do a deep dive. So I just say, you know what? I'm like, I'll pass on the fluoride treatment. I don't think I need it. So yeah.
Would you say
That's my
most people?
skepticism.
Yeah, like skepticism and like lack of trust, would you say they're the same thing, like lack of trust or skepticism?
Well, it's not. I but I'm aware that my skepticism is not based on the fact that I know better. I don't know anything. I don't know anything about fluoride. Nothing at all. I've never done a deep dive in it. I have no idea. I don't. I'm like, okay, there are these movements that happen. I think it certainly does what it says it's supposed to do. I'm sure it almost certainly does. I'm going to come out and just say, of course, like, my God, right? But I've just not done a deep dive. And so I have enough in me that says, about a lot of things, man. I pick up a bottle of some food, and there's just 10 different hydrochloroxyquine and biosulfate, da 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 da. Who knows what the F? I have no idea. I'm just like, hang on a second, man. Hold on. Wait a second. But that's me, not thinking that I know better, and I'm not going to go out on a big campaign about it, and I'm not going to read some pseudoscience person. But I have like students. I got this student who, when he was an undergrad, this guy was amazing. He was this environmentalist kid, and wow, he was amazing. The research, all he did was just study, right? About the effects of various chemicals in the air and so on. And he's still doing environmental work. This was, 25, 30 years ago. And wow, like, okay, dude, you are like, he wasn't just reading what other activists said. Like, he was doing the original research, and he was coming to some conclusions that he's like, nah, this over here is bad. But this over here, it's yeah, that's not a problem. Don't, yeah, I don't have to worry about that kind of thing, So,
do you think like most of taking skepticism and like evaluating that sociologically, like in our culture, or would you say that we're a skeptical? I don't even know why I'm taking it this direction, but would you say we're like a skeptical culture, or like an optimistic culture,
no, I
or
think
not, or maybe a more not optimistic, more gullible, like gullible or skeptic, and maybe what's the because now there's like different reasons for skepticism. You're saying like not because I think I'm better, I think I know the right thing. But you're saying I'm skeptical because, I just don't know, and I need information before I need information before I make a decision. It's not coming from a place of like pride. And I guess it made me want to extrapolate skepticism and like as a culture or as a global society. Are we like skeptical? I don't know.
Well,
That's just a question, but
well, here's one of the things, like these phones and the internet, it allows anybody to publish anything. And once you see it, the human mind is such that the moment you see something in print, doesn't matter what it is, the moment you see it in print, it makes we link it with being true. I find a website. Whoa, here's this person that laid out this argument. I don't know. Let's stick with the fluoride thing, against fluoride. And they're using big words, and they're saying this, and they're telling us that, hey, back in 1978, the federal government did X, Y, and Z, right? And they're laying it out. And they may or may not have footnotes, but the fact is that it's this website, and it's well put together. And so I'm naturally going to be inclined to believe it. That's just how my brain is how it functions and how it
because
operates.
of like familiarization, like people are familiarized with, if something looks pretty or it looks good, I'm familiar with that,
Just
and so
not
there's
even looks
truth.
good. Just the fact that it's written down, that somebody said
Okay.
it, the moment somebody says it, right? So that's why I'm really careful, even in class, about things that I say, that I'm like, hey, you know what? The moment I say something, people are going to believe it, because they're going to think, hey, this guy, he teaches this class, and look, it's a big class, and he's got all these students, so he must be really knowledgeable and smart, or he wouldn't have all these students. But of course, it's the furthest from the truth. That's not how it works at a university at all. So, but you don't know that if you're looking. You see a big audience. If you watch someone giving a lecture in a big room of 1,000, a big, huge auditorium of 1,000 people, or you watch someone give a very similar lecture to a group of about 12 people with really
That's
kind of
another research project.
shitty camera work, one camera, shitty microphone. They give the same lecture as opposed to this big, huge auditorium with, multiple cameras, kind of like we have in Social 19. You're going to believe the one person, right?
The perception of credibility, like so interesting.
So for me, I think one of the things where we've really are hurt is that I was saying with Dave, we all want to feel special in some way. We want to feel like we got our handle on truth. You know what I mean? Because we're hearing this mystery, man. Lori always says we're put on this earth. There's no operating instructions, and we got to figure it out on our own. And he has
Right.
certain people, they come along and say, "Here's your operating instructions. It's it's the Quran or the Bible or the Torah or something, or
Hmm.
the Bhagavad Gita or whatever it's going to be, right? The Tao,
Right.
and or there's something else, right?
Hmm.
Physics. Here's a book about Newtonian physics. That's all you need. Like, go.
Right. Like, how do you navigate? Like
How do you
the
navigate, man?
right.
Yeah. When you don't know, we don't know. And we can believe we know, but everything we believe we know, it's based on faith. So like I can believe that Jesus is the Son of God. That's cool. That's great and good for me that I believe that. And if I can go to sleep every night believing that and wake up in the morning and believing that, it's like, and feel it in my heart. That's just, and have my life kind of shaped around that, my
Mhm.
moral order,
Right.
work with other people and have community members who think the same thing as me. That's the most beautiful thing in the world. And I can pray with them and I can sing with them and I can break bread with them. And like, oh my God, like my life now, all the mystery of life starts to make sense. Like that's awesome. That's really cool. So, but that's based on faith. I don't know that to be true. I can't know that Jesus is the Son of God. There's no logic behind that. And I can say that, well, it's written in the book, but the book doesn't mean anything. I have to believe that the book is God's words. This is not the Bible, by the way. This is a book, a book by a Korean Nobel Prize winner, actually, Hong Kong, she just won the Nobel Prize in literature. She's
Oh wow.
Korean. Anyway,
Congrats to her.
but I have to believe that based on faith. I have to have faith that this
Right.
is true. It's not
Hmm.
true. I have to believe it's true, and
And
which is cool.
like keep it and like maintaining I thought you said something like and maintaining some type of openness. Um, Actually, I don't know what I was gonna say. I thought before you were saying that
No,
you like even if you believe this, you still have a even if like someone does believe it, you have a sense of openness that like leaves you that doesn't leave you like falling into the rabbit hole. But I mean, most people that are Christians, they believe that wholeheartedly. It's not like I
no,
believe
not
this and
necessarily. Nah, most Christians have a very Christian. There's just like every other belief system. People have a very wide range of beliefs. And if you put people in a room and you have them write out their entire belief system, if you take 20 average Christians who are pretty
Mhm,
thoughtful about their Christianity, or
mhm,
Jews or Muslims or Buddhists or Hindus or whatever, put them in a
mhm,
room and say, hey, write out, give me 4 pages of your basic belief system. You're going to get 20 different ways of seeing it. Some things they're
right,
going to agree on, but it's going to be very different, right? Okay, so
right,
going back to this, the skepticism, like in this world, we're put here, we have no operating instructions, and we got to figure it out. And then somebody come, and that's hard day after day, man. Elijah, when it's your age, it's okay to feel like, yeah, I'm lost. I don't really know what to believe anymore. But
okay.
man, as the
I
decades go
appreciate that.
on, you better you better come up with some. It gets harder and harder, man. And by the time you're my age, you're just like, shit, man. Give me something, man. Give me
Dude, I'm
something.
feeling the pressure.
It's like trying to figure out how to hit a golf ball straight. It's like, damn it, man. I just got my swing down, man. I'm hitting my 7-iron. I'm killing it. And then you go out the
Mhm.
next time and you can't hit your 7-iron worth at all. And you just think, God. And okay, so
Right, right, right.
so now we've got this world. This is the skepticism, right? People wanna they want to take that skepticism that they should be applying to lots of other things, and they want to apply it to things they really don't know anything about.
Mm.
And it's like,
But
well, okay.
and you're referencing like flat earthers, for example,
No, I'm
or just
referencing, like, let's say fluoride. It's like, look, man, you gotta go in You can't just read the people who are critiquing fluoride. And if you do, you better make sure you read all their footnotes and you see who they footnoted and what they footnoted. And you got to make sure that the studies they footnoted are actually really legit studies. And then you go to the studies that say that fluoride is not dangerous at all.
Yep.
And you go to the study and you read what the study was and you'd be like, hey, man. You go to the original study and you find it and you start sorting your way through that. And if you don't do that, you can't just say like, I have evidence and I have truth. Like you don't have evidence and truth because you haven't gone to look at these various studies that are making different claims. And you really have to do that. You know, like Lori was trying to figure out how to, whether Elijah, does that make sense?
Yeah. I was just thinking about like what makes us so eager to speak without doing research. Like we're all so eager to speak and then not doing the research.
Because we want to have opinions. Everyone wants to have an
Yeah.
opinion. And to do that research,
Yeah.
man, it takes like, oh my God. You know what it would
Right.
take? You really would take it. You'd have to you need a week. You really need a week just to do a deep dive because you're going to get to the statistics and you're not going to know what they mean. So if you
I
don't
wonder if
study,
I wonder if there was ever a point where taking a week would be like feasible or it would feel feasible.
no, I
If
got
like
one for
ever,
you. Yeah, Lori did one. Lori, who by the way studied statistics, she did it. She has her PhD in statistics, right? I mean, it's human development, but essentially, she studied the equation for a straight line for 4 years.
wow,
And
that's
so here,
insane.
so her mom, they wanted to give her mom, she had cancer, and they wanted to give her this one drug.
hmm
And Lori's like, I don't know, man. And I said, no, the drug has it's shown to have really to have a really good response to this cancer. We think she'll get an extra 3 months. She could get an extra 3 months. And Lori's like, wait, hang on a second, man. What? Yeah. Okay. All right. Lori goes and gets 3 copies she goes and finds 3 copies of research on this drug. Okay. And these are long articles. One's like 20 pages, one's 30 pages, one's 40 pages, something like that, right? And she starts reading them, and she's reading with a tooth comb, and she gets to the end of this one in particular, and she's like, "Whoa, hang on a second. Hang on. Basically, there's they gave this drug to I don't know, like 8,000 people or whatever, and it had a positive impact on like 6 of them, right?
Oh wow.
It was just something crazy like this, okay? Really crazy.
Right.
But statistically speaking, you could show that the drug was
Significant? Is that what it is?
what the relationship, it was significant relationship to be like, yeah, okay. So therefore the doctor can say somehow it has a positive impact, but it was so small. It
The
was just
percentage of
so
possibility.
infinitesimally tiny, that
Right.
it's like, this isn't going to help my mom. Right. But
Right.
if you don't know that, you're not gonna, you're not gonna, you're just not gonna be able to see that. So she sent it to her professor, her former professor, who's just this brilliant statistician guy. She
Wow.
said, "Am I reading this correctly?" He's like, "Yeah, you're reading it correctly." It was some crazy. That wasn't what I just said. It was like 6 people out of 8,000. It wasn't that, but it was something that was so small that she basically told her mom, "You're not taking that drug. Like you're not doing that."
And then that's when the doctor can use that and like say, well, this is significant, based
Well,
off
the
of these
doctor,
articles that were
her
published.
doctor doesn't know because the drug salesperson comes into
Are the
the
ones sell
office.
it. Right.
Yeah, they're going to say, "You're a sales guy. You know how this works. You were selling wine, but you could sell pharmaceuticals. You'd made a lot more money." You go in the
Yeah.
office, you say like, "Hey, here's a drug," and you got your nice packaging and
Yeah.
you got the numbers
These are the
here and it
features and
all looks good.
benefits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and look, the whole industry has checks and balances, right? These aren't people who are lying. We're trying to work this stuff out. This stuff is really complicated. Whether a particular drug interdiction is going to have a positive impact on prolonging somebody's life who has cancer, right? It's very, 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 very complicated, right? And some drugs are really amazing and other drugs, less so, right? But So fluoride, you got to go back to the research saying like, yeah, no, it's fine. It's safe. And you got to dig in, man. You got to
Yeah.
dig in,
And
so.
that was my ask, if there was like a point in time, like in the timeline in the past like 80 years, maybe before cell phones, where people were like, you know what, I'm gonna do my diligence, or if it was just always,
No,
there was never
no.
any usually diligence. It's just
No,
got
you
it.
can't. No, because you wouldn't have access to those papers. Like, Lori was able to
True,
get that online
true.
even. You wouldn't have access. You'd have to go to a library, to a big research library and get the journal, find out where that journal
Right,
was published. And you'd have to sit there and make photocopies and take it home or whatever you had to do.
right.
No, and the problem is, so what I can do is Lori could have got online. She could go on a website and she could write this article that's 2 pages saying exactly what she saw and how she saw it. And then somebody else would read that and say, oh, believe this Lori woman because look, she's critiquing this article. But of course, Lori was never certain. It wasn't clear that this was the relationship with this drug. You know what I mean? It wasn't clear for her. I mean, in the end, it was clear enough to tell her mom, listen, that this isn't going to help you. And her mom was far along in her treatment. It wasn't going to help. And her cancer had progressed far enough that it probably was so highly unlikely to do anything more than prolong her life for a month, if
Right.
that. And she was incapacitated in so many ways. But yeah,
Mhm.
this is the point being, this is the kind of stuff you have to do, right? But she spent many, many hours on that, man. Many hours. She like, and
Diving in, I'm sure.
yeah. So
Yeah, and but outside of that, it's like those that are skeptical, you just, I guess there's, you need to have the right to be skeptical, you need to do the work. Is that what you're saying? Like in
yeah,
order to,
yeah. Well, I wouldn't want to be skeptical, and I wouldn't want to be a skeptic and not be relatively smart about it. But the
hmm
problem is, you can meet up with other skeptics, and then you're all together in a room, and you all think that because this is the nature of it, right? You can think because
hmm
you're all together, you can think, hey, well, we're smarter than those people out there. And the more of you are in that room, right? The
echoes.
more it's this denial of
Hmm
what is. And that's a big problem. Like, you have to find people who are against what you think you're trying to argue. So right now, for
hmm
example, for me, I'm reading everything I can possibly read about how some of these some stuff that's happening in the Trump administration
hmm
can be a really good thing, like how it can turn positive in different ways, right?
That's
Well, a
cool.
lot of that
Yeah.
we don't know. There's no direct relationship because we don't know, right?
Right.
You do some of this stuff. We're just like well, I don't know what's going to in Ukraine, for example.
hmm
He just today called, the Ukraine president, like a knucklehead, and like, you brought the war on your. Basically, it's like talking points from Russia. You know what I mean? It's like Putin said, Lavrov,
Say
and
this, Trump.
here, Trump, here, yeah, here's what we want you to do. Just say this, right? And he said it, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, that doesn't sound. That's pretty crazy. But then I'm like, well, hang on a second, hang on, go back.
Hmm
You said amongst other things that Ukraine started the war. I'm like,
hmm
nobody in the West thinks Ukraine started the war. Like, nobody thinks that. The Russians,
Right.
they lined up, right? But I'm like, well, hang on a second.
Like,
Uh,
where did that happen? Like, did that happen? Or are
Yeah,
there
no, it
implications
that
that,
definitely happened. The Russians moved their
okay.
military hardware up on the border and they attacked Ukraine, right? Okay,
But,
but hang on. Let me look at this. Let me take a step back and let me try to look at this from lots of different angles about how seeing it this way could lead to a lasting peace in some way, right?
right.
And I just force myself. It's like part of me, it's just like, dude, that's not true. It's wrong. You're wrong. Like, come on, man. Why are you saying that? Right? Why are you
Mhm.
repeating the Kremlin talking points? Like, you're the US president. These are, anybody who's old enough knows this is Soviet Union was our enemies, man. You know what I mean? And we got a guy in power who's taking the talking points from Russia. You're like, oh, wait, what? But then I take a step back and I keep saying, wait, hang on a second. Hold on. Before you go there,
Mm-hmm.
start thinking, think really hard. What are you missing? What could you be seeing? How could this be good?
Yeah,
What yeah, go
where did
ahead.
that take you? Like when you
Well,
were
it
thinking, because
takes
it's
me,
taking me to like lived experience, like how Laurie talks about like there's actual facts and then there's positional facts,
yeah, yeah.
and it made me think about like that's if talking points from Russia, if that's Russia's position, like what did they perceive or experience, or what was the lived experiences of those that are in, I don't know, that position to be like, oh, it wasn't us, it was them.
Well,
You
listen,
know,
you
you
can make
know?
a lot of arguments. One thing that in Russia, they were, one thing Putin was saying, going back 10, 12 years ago, is like, listen, man, NATO, you need to stay out of our backyard. Our former territories, and Ukraine is one, right? Like provinces, territories, right? That are now independent states. You can't bring them over into the EU and NATO. Like, you can't do that. Like, don't do it. Like, so we're gonna have a standoff here, but you need to agree to this, and I'll agree to not intervene in the West, right? Well, NATO didn't. They started. They didn't go with that. They didn't fully abide by that, and they were, kind of dangling lots of opportunities out, not just Ukraine, but other states as well. And like, they were engaging in the muckety muck of global nation state boundary making and boundary changing.
Right.
So it's like,
And
and so when some of this was happening, Lori and I were really involved in NATO too. So, I was kind of on the inside at some levels going like, well, why are you guys doing this? Right. So,
why
you
are you
can
guys doing
argue that,
what? You were asking
why
that
are you
question?
intervening? Why are you playing with this stuff, man? There's certain agreements that have been made, and now you're effing it all up. Right.
Wow.
Um,
Wow.
so, the Russians, they're not crazy. You just put yourself there. I mean,
Mhm.
everyone's crazy at some level, right? But put
Mhm.
yourself there, and it's like with the Chinese, like Jinping, they see something.
Mhm.
The Iranians, they see the Iranian leadership. They're rational. They see something. So
Mhm.
what are they seeing? Um, Kim Il Jong in North Korea, what's he seeing, man? Like, you gotta go there, and you have to just be willing to put yourself fully into the shoes of that person. What statecraft things are they seeing that you don't see from where you're standing? And
And and it's like I see the differences. It's like you and like Laurie see this almost as and like World in Conversation, like see that as like an obligation to see it that way. Like while
mhm.
others see that as, oh well, I guess if I put my pride down, or like, oh well, I guess if I then we can make this happen. But like I see the difference as in, no, this is an essential part of the process in order to create solutions, and it's an obligation, not necessarily like, oh, I guess I'll just train myself to think differently. But it's like the purpose of, you're seeing it as it's a necessity to
Yeah, I would say that. It's a necessity if you're going to be making proclamations, and certainly to do the kind of thing that I'm doing.
Mhm.
Uh, it's absolutely essential, you know. Yeah,
Right, right.
but
And
and it's probably why it may be that the Social 118 channel will never grow beyond what it is, because if I wanted it to grow, I would bring people on here. I would debate them. I would take extreme views. I would get really argumentative. I would call people names. I would do all sorts of stuff.
right,
Uh,
to
and
appeal.
to appeal that part of the human mind that wants that feels fulfilled by that. It feels like a righteous sense of connectivity. But all
Right.
you get in social 19, man, or these office hour conversations is you're just going to get more
Taking all
confusion.
sides. Yeah.
Yeah, man. I
Wait,
love when I see something that Trump does that I first say like, oh, dude, are you kidding me, man? Seriously? Or now at Elon Musk or whatever, this guy. Oh my God.
right.
And then I turn around and I see it from a different perspective. And I'm like, oh, that could be very cool, actually, right? I
You're like
love
you
that.
in
I had the same
discovery.
thing
You're
with
like,
Biden. Yeah, it was the same thing. I'd be like, oh, dude,
right.
Biden, come on, man. Are you serious? And then I would go, wait, hang on. I would see it and yeah, well, that could
Yeah,
turn out all right.
I can imagine that feels freeing in a
Well, it
way.
feels freeing on one hand, but it feels it makes me, I feel lost on the other. Yeah. But you got this one. Here's the New York Times headline today, right? Musk, they just found his Doge or whatever it's called. They just saved
$5,000
No, they just
a month.
saved $8 billion savings. They found they were able to save. There was an $8 billion purchase, right? So they're talking about $8 billion, And so the New
Yeah.
York Times was doing it. Do you know this? Did you see the
Well,
headline?
I heard about something like where Elon Musk was going to talk to Trump about redistributing the wealth to the citizens and giving them like a $5,000 a month tax return
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well,
and
I don't
from the
know.
money
All
that
right.
they've
Well, that's
saved.
cool.
That's what I heard.
Sure. Oh, all right. Oh, okay. That's pretty cool.
No,
Anyway,
I know exactly what you're about to say, Sam. This is great.
yeah, then the New York Times did something. They say, wait, it wasn't $8 billion. It was $8 million, and it wasn't even $8 million because they only spent like 2.8 million on the project up till that time. So they pulled the plug on it. So instead of $8 billion, it was $2.8 million that they saved us, right?
Oh wow,
But that's not going to
it's
stop
nothing.
people from. I'm sure Trump is out there now, even talking and Musk or whoever, just talking about $8 billion savings, $8 billion. They'll just keep saying it. You know what I mean? And that's where this stuff gets really, really dangerous and gets very problematic.
It's been a couple of things that I've seen where people are saying, "Oh, it was $100 billion or $500 million," but then you look at how when the money actually left, and it's like, hold on, like 80% of that money has already been spent. So at best, we're saving 20% of the number that you're claiming, which is usually still a lot of money. So why don't they just highlight the actual money? But it's because it doesn't start with a billion, so we don't think of it as anything because we're how many $1 trillion in debt, so people aren't going to be happy with, oh, we saved $25 million on this project because we cut the cord 8 years into a 10-year contract or something.
Yeah, that's right. This is the problem. And so if you're not paying it, you can't read headlines, man. And also if you're reading headline, oh God, I can't even. It's so sad to me, man. Elijah, when I leave my body someday,
Yeah.
I take my last breath.
Yeah.
Just remember this moment right here. Just like
I will.
and so if there's a little memorial or something, you can say, hey, don't feel bad for Sam, man. He was really done with all this nonsense. God, couldn't take
He's
it
happy he
anymore.
had a smooth landing.
Yeah, I watched him. I watched his brain explode a couple times, and he didn't need this anymore, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Z. What do I make of the rise of Nazism? Well, I know seeing a rise of Nazism, actually. I'm seeing that. Well, okay, hang on. Here's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing people who are, let's take Europe or let's take here. I'm seeing people who are taking positions that are oppositional to the positions that the kind of standard liberal establishment is taking. And when I say liberal establishment, I mean like empower individuals to think on their own and give them a liberal education, and they will think logically and rationally and so on and so forth, right? And so you move in that way. But I'm seeing people who are taking these positions, and some of the positions are they want to hang on to the culture, and they want to look backwards and not forward, and they want to look backward to some things that they liked that were better than what they're seeing, including like the disruption of life around them, because of, different things in the economy or immigration, or one thing after another. And so they take these positions that are more aligned with what became the extreme right-wing positions of the past, right? And so we can label them fascism or Nazism or however we want to label them. And then sometimes these people will even do these salutes or whatever it is, or use the symbols even of Nazism. But they're just using symbols because they don't have any. That's just the nature of it, right? But Nazism is never. It's never coming back. Fascism, those are two very specific movements to a very specific time. But we are going to see but the sociological term is authoritarianism, and that's where that power is concentrated into a relatively small number of people who also have the means of force at their control, at their disposal.
So that's what you're seeing as a threat.
Yeah, we're seeing that. We're definitely seeing that. There's a tendency for that. And this Trump isn't one of the things about the current administration, President Trump. I'm just going to say President Trump, is that for me as a sociologist, it's like, wow, the fact that this guy has so much power is mind-blowing. And power just comes from people giving it to you. They just give it to him. And he's the kingmaker, man. He can just make a phone call. He can do this, he can do that, and just like, boom, pull someone up out of the ashes, so to speak. And like, wow. So for me as a sociologist, anything I think about of all the other stuff, is it good? Is it bad? Is it this? Is it that? I set all that aside for a moment. Absolutely fascinating to observe it in action.
Are you saying like power relative to like presidency, or just like the unique power that Trump has?
That he has it as president and as not president. Listen, for 4 years in the Biden administration, he was the assistant president. It wasn't, Kamala Harris, the vice president. It was Trump, man. He was just right on the wings, just chirping in, just
how are you seeing
that?
That's
stuff.
Interesting.
This is Lori's idea. She's like, my God, we had two presidents. We had a president and we had this other guy off in the wings. Yeah. Honestly, the guy, it's just the amount of power. It's tremendous. It's absolutely tremendous. And so this could go very wrong. This could go very wrong very quickly. If this guy abuses that, and if the courts don't step up and say like, yo, hang on a second, man, this could go really, really wrong. Go ahead, man.
What's unique about his power? Is it that he's like just the wealth that he had, or that he already had?
I don't know. Yeah, it doesn't have anything to do with wealth. Well, it has something to do with the wealth that he had, but which is only probably a portion of what he claims to have. But I don't know what it is, man. That's what's so fascinating about it sociologically. You only have power when people give you power. It's the power to make something happen. Power is the ability to do something over and above the wishes of other people who are trying to keep you from doing that. And how and why does this guy have so much power? It is absolutely a mystery. And it's not a question that anybody, hey, you can write a book about it, but you can't lay it out in a single page. You can write a book, and at the end of the book, you're going to come up with it's going to be a big, huge, complex story, but you're not going to be able to put in one or two paragraphs. It's not like that. That's what makes it so fascinating sociologically. As a character, this guy is wow, man. Love him or hate him. It's not even loving him or hate him. I'm just speaking as a sociologist, right? So I watch this. I think the fact that he could go on. He could go on and say, yeah, we saved $8 billion. And everybody could say like, hey, it was only $8 million. And he could just keep saying $8 billion. And he just keeps saying it. and eventually it just becomes $8 billion. Well, it will never fully become but in a way it
But he
will
has
be.
a control of the
And his
narrative.
followers, he has power to just keep his followers, a huge percentage of his followers. Now, it might be 9% or 17% or 28%, but a huge number of his followers to see, like, oh yeah, it's $8 billion. And the liberal media, the fake news, they're just trying to convince us that it's only $8 million because they want to take them down. There's a huge number of these people that will just do that. That's power. That's power, man. Biden couldn't get his dog to stop biting people. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't have the power to do that. Like, my God, dude, Fido, whatever his name was, stop attacking, stop biting Secret Service men. This is, this is amazing.
Wow. I'm so curious to, like, you're saying we don't know, but I'm like, what is it that makes it so interesting?
Yeah.
Would you be, I'm just
I
asking
don't
random
know.
stuff. Would you be able to say what made Biden
Hey,
seem
Eric Sell, the likelihood of a constitutional crisis is growing. This is part of the problem. That's what I say about the courts. Yeah, it's growing, actually. And that has me worried. And what has me really worried is that is the violence. We have so many guns. I can't believe we haven't, it is the possibility for violence. Yeah. That I am more. So listen, when I'm talking, Eric, when I'm talking like I'm talking right now, I'm just speaking as I'm just speaking as a sociologist, completely remove myself. So if I go back in, and I'll say this to those of you who support Trump, you need to understand how dangerous these times are because of Trump. This is what happens with these governments, right? This is what happens with these leaders. They take a step and they step off into a void and they don't come back from it. And the courts make a couple really bungled decisions to stop them. And, now the Republicans in the Senate and Congress in general, right? Both the House and the Senate, a lot of these Republicans who helped to give Trump so much power, they're all, like people like Mitch McConnell, they're all of a sudden going like, whoa, hang on a second. There's something bigger here. John Roberts gets it. Like they get it. But it may be that I feel like the judicial branch is really, really strong, but be careful because we could be in a crisis.
Yeah, one of the things you just said is that the government, once it has power, is not very keen on relinquishing that power back to the citizens. And that's why the Patriot Act, for instance, is still in effect, because it's really hard for our government to say, okay, we did this because of this reason, now we're going to back off. And that's one of the things that I hear a lot from conservatives explaining Doge to people that they disagree with, is the fact that Doge isn't getting rid of a lot of the money. What it's doing is it's trying to put a pause to see where is our money actually being used. And my thing specifically with the separation of powers seeming to be disintegrating, every president after every president seems to get worse and worse and worse. So this isn't just a Trump thing. I think Biden did a bad job with the separation of powers. I think Trump did in his first term pretty bad. I think Obama did really bad in his, et cetera, especially with the amount of executive orders that have gone through. Yeah. And so now I'm thinking, like, who is the party that's going to sit up and say, hey, we're going to stop doing executive powers, or we're going to limit it severely and really try and trust our Senate, and specifically the House with money, because the House of Representatives constitutionally is the only part of our government that says how we can spend money. Of course, there's a little bit of wiggle room with the executive being able to use some money, but the idea is that Congress, that the House of Representatives specifically, is the one who decides. And then Matt said for international viewers, they might not know what we mean by a constitutional crisis. So if you want to go in and quickly explain that.
Yeah. Well, hey, Renzo Kukin, I agree with you. This is why sometimes you just do it. Like, you just cut your budget by, cut your budget by 10%, man. Just see what you can do. Just figure it out, right? It's good to do that kind of thing once in a while.
You have to do it kind of intelligently, though. You can't just be like, all right, 10%'s gone. Because, for instance, I forget what organization in our government got rid of them, but there were a bunch of people who were fired who were working on the bird flu. And now the government's going back to them and pretty much having to beg them, come back to work. We didn't mean to fire you. Like, this is a huge issue. And that's that's a huge concern if you just like, all right, 10% gone. But if you're like, hey, 10% in these specific areas are going to equal 10%, that's a lot smarter than just saying a bunch of people are just going to be gone.
No. Yeah, no, I'm 100% there. Like, give some thought to what you're doing, like give some thought to just say like, hey, all these government employees who are interns and on track to be hired full time, we're just going to not hire. I mean, it's just like, it's really dumb. There's nothing that's necessary right now. It's just pure political shenanigans. There's nothing that we're not in an economic crisis where the country's going under. There's nothing that needs to happen tomorrow. Go very slowly, There are all these stories that are coming out that are just really, really terrible. So anyway.
There's another comment by Triple Z, and they said that, we need to be auditing branches of our government. And I think I've been hearing quite a bit about the Clinton administration, how they did it. They pretty much, because for people who don't know, during the Clinton administration, we reduced the amount of spending and reduced our budget, our debt. And I think they said that by like 2015, we were going to actually have a surplus. And then, of course, the wars happened. But one of the things that the Clinton administration did that's different than the Trump administration, what they're currently doing is Clinton said, I want to put together a task force, kind of like Doge. And then they have like a year and a half or something to tell me, hey, these are the places that we see extreme spending that we can probably get rid of. And then I think, and I could be wrong about this, but I think then they put those recommendations to Congress, and then Congress passed a bunch of things to start limiting some of the governmental organizations or the NGOs that we may have worked with. Whereas right now it just seems like Doge is giving their recommendations to the president, who is just then using executive powers to end things.
This is just really okay. Now I'm going to use the word that I say I never use. This is just really dumb. It's not very smart.
It's not sustainable at best.
Dude, I wouldn't do it in my household, man. I wouldn't do that. That's just crazy. Yeah, well, this is the irony. So, Elijah, the idea is that Democrats spend money and Republicans don't, right? So just look at where the war started, look at government spending and how it really unfolds. And that's where you have to do your research to see some things. So anyway, I don't know, man. I'm holding my breath, trying to be optimistic, and I don't know. We'll see what happens. Hey, anyway, look, I don't know what's going on in class tomorrow. I'm going to have to figure it out tonight. We had a cool class yesterday. I really appreciated that.
Yeah. I was going to say, I wonder, have you ever done a class on taking all sides?
No, I haven't. I should do that.
You did something similar. He used to do this two sides of the same coin, where he would take an issue, like let's say immigration, and then he would present to one half of the students pro-immigration stances and had them try and push back, and then he did the opposite, trying to show both sides.
Maybe I'll do that later this semester. I'll do that. With immigration would be a nice way to do that. Yeah. Or
That's cool too. I just meant like the concept as a whole, like in terms of like how Laurie talks about how we have this competitive mindset, like we live in a paradigm where we're trying to compete, and like we're in the war paradigm versus the paradigm of like taking all sides, and more broad, like that would be a great example of it, like the immigration thing, but just as a concept as a whole, and so like how the paradigm can like shift our mindset is where I was thinking. But also the that's a great example too, like two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, I think we could do that. I think that'd be pretty cool. The problem is I got to figure out how to do it, because I can't talk about it. You know what I mean? Like, people don't, I can talk about taking all sides. I could bring Lori in about taking all sides, but maybe I'll talk to her and see if there's some way we can model it in the classroom. Do
Yeah, I
something
feel like
really kind of creative.
there's something there. I feel like that. Yeah, that I feel
Yeah,
like if you and Laurie talked about it, it could iron something
yeah,
out.
yeah. Okay, let's do that. Let's think about
Be
it.
cool.
Yeah. Anyway, hey Amy, I think that you were really on point there. I agree. People want to. We want to look. In the end, we want uh, people around us who we feel like they have a handle on something, and Trump absolutely has that. Man, he speaks authoritatively. He speaks like like he's the old guy down in your uncle who sits in the corner and pontificates, and somehow you just believe him because he just seems like he understands. He's a good
Yeah.
old boy and he just gets it, or your aunt or whoever it is, right? And we want that.
Wow, that's such a desirable trait,
Well,
like for in a leader, you
yeah.
know.
Yeah, who's gonna nobody's gonna follow somebody like me. I'm like so wishy-washy. I think some people will who want wishy-washy.
Yeah.
They want something in the middle. They want to see that, but they don't want that. I don't have that capacity to be that
Huh.
person.
Man,
Yeah.
that's a whole other conversation of like, I think that's even a place of research, right? Like, who do we value? Like, what do we value in leaders? And like, what's the most
Yeah.
desirable trait? And like, I think,
Yeah.
yeah, like a contemplative leader, one that's gonna
Yeah.
consider all sides. You're saying that that's one that's
Well, that's a
undervalued,
wise. Yeah, that's the wise. Those are that's like the wise king. Be really nice if we had a wise king right now
right?
who just had all power. Hey, let's get past a bunch of this stuff. Like you have a small group of advisors. You're really wise. You got a lot of power. You're just gonna like hold things down right now. That would be really
Hmm.
nice. But you didn't get that. And
You
when
say
I
the right things to like your community. It's like trying. I
yeah,
mean, the
we
right
we
thing. What's the right thing? But
yeah, we'd never
maybe
have that. We'd never
inclusive.
accept that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nah, it's just like,
Or
yeah, you can use that word. You can use inclusive. So you gotta like it's like by the way, I saw this list of all the words that were supposed to that are connected to the DE and I that you're not really supposed to use anymore with all these grants
inclusive is
that
one of
people are
them.
writing. Well, yeah, absolutely. But like
Yeah.
everyone is my class, man. I'm like, oh my God, Lori has this idea that that I'm just the whole class is gonna just get shut down because like everything I do in there is what we're not supposed to do.
I have the
And
same feeling as Lori does.
yeah, like my God. So
Well,
I don't know what we can talk about. Yeah, Jeff, I don't know what that means, man. Like what are God. But this
it's
is the
weird.
thing. People want that and people are cheering so you're cheering this guy on, right? For all this anti-DEI stuff. But understand what you're also cheering on is the people that come along and say, hey, this Sam Richards guy in Social 19, you need to we need to shut this guy down and get him out of here. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and with the current way of do something, ask questions later, I'm afraid that that's going to be what's going to happen. Like maybe the university is going to eventually be pressured. Okay, you need to get rid of all classes that have anything to do with DEI, and you have to do it immediately. They're not going to be like, okay, so what are the classes that they're actually talking about? They're going to look at us and be like, you
Dude,
literally have classes on
race,
YouTube.
ethnicity, culture. All
Yeah.
three of those words are they're prominent on the list of the DEI words that you're not supposed to use anymore.
Oh my
Race,
gosh.
ethnicity,
And
culture.
the
They could
crazy
have
thing
called
is,
this.
a lot of the conservatives who comment in our comment section would respond and be like, "Well, this isn't a class that's going to get gotten rid of because you guys aren't quote unquote woke." And it's like, man, that number one, it depends on who you ask and what they've seen. And number two, it really, really matters on what we decide is and isn't acceptable within that range, because you might have a
Yeah.
word like race that's on this list that you can't include, but maybe somebody comes around and they're like, we need to talk about race realism, and for some reason that might stick on and be okay, but then talking about race the way that we do might not be okay. And it's like, man, where are we going to draw this hypothetical
Yeah.
line of what is wokeness and what isn't? Because there totally is clear differences in a lot of these things that you can make an argument for. But specifically for us, we're on this fine line of like trying to have these conversations that actually matter. And one of that, and some people might interpret that in one way, and some people might interpret the same exact clip a completely different way.
Yeah.
And it's terrifying.
Yeah.
So I'm on Lori's side with this.
All right. Yeah. Well, whatever. I'll enjoy it. I'm going to follow a big fan of comedy, man. I'm going to use World in Conversation. We're going to try to I'm going to try to leverage that to make it $1 million. And I'm going to head off to my apartment in Columbia.
That's wild. So like some people could view that class as like trying to push an agenda
Oh, yeah.
towards like silencing other perspectives. Because like most
Oh,
people
yeah.
want to shut down certain things because they view it now as like, oh, they're being combative and are trying to silence and like create
Yeah.
conformity. So they're like, oh, this class is trying to create conformity and silence other
Yeah.
perspectives, essentially,
Yeah. Well,
that have
there's
this
nobody.
left-wing agenda.
Yeah. No one's going to do the research on it, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that's
it's
not how it
crazy.
operates. Like who's gonna do that? We had someone comment the other day that I should be. I don't know, Jeff. I don't know what that was.
That
but I
that
should be in
was.
prison.
Hold on, I'll get the quote out. That was from a couple years ago. I had screenshotted it, and I was looking through my phone at pictures of my dog when we had gotten him.
Oh, all right.
And
That wasn't
so,
a recent thing.
no, I think this was from when we got attacked from Fox, and it said this professor should be in prison, not teaching our kids.
Oh, okay.
I wouldn't be
Oh, all
surprised if the
right.
Chinese paid him for this crap. Man,
Yeah.
if I had a tally of how many people said that we're being paid by the Chinese, if I
Yeah.
got $1 for the amount of times I've heard that, I'd be getting paid more from that than how much the Chinese government has actually paid us, which is nothing.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
God.
That's really funny. Yeah.
Elijah, have you
You
gotten
did
your
get paid.
Chinese Communist Party check yet?
Not,
Yeah.
I'm waiting for it.
Same.
So
Dude, no, I got paid. I think it was like $50 to be on a Chinese news channel one time. Like I was
Oh,
a commentator on a news channel, but that was private industry. It wasn't the government. So
that's
I'm all
pretty
right
cool.
there. It
not
was only
maybe.
50 bucks. It was
I
like
think
2 hours too, man. I'm like, come on, you Chinese, like you got a lot of money.
Pay
Yeah,
up.
yeah, yeah. Like
That's
what's
funny.
that nonsense?
Th-
Yeah.
This is
I didn't even know they were going to pay me at all. I just went on because I'm like, sounds really interesting.
they like
Yeah.
slipped it to you in your pocket. They're like,
No, they sent it to me. Yeah, that was wild.
okay.
Okay.
This is very random. Yeah, actually, I think they got my bank account number. Uh-oh. I think they got my bank account number
It
wrong.
was supposed to go to Matt. Yeah.
There, I was gonna
Hey, by the
say
way,
this is
Matt, I'm
okay.
gonna be in Korea. So I'll be there when you arrive. So just like ping me when you get there. Make sure that you're on. You need to get Kakao Talk on your phone, Matt. All right. Make sure you download that and put your phone number in. You can use Kakao Talk.
there's a really good chance he already has it.
All right.
He's
Paul.
preparing
Yeah,
for
you're
his
in
trip,
there.
man.
All right, dude. All right. We'll be in touch. Let's connect on Kakao Talk. All right. Go ahead, Elijah. And then
No,
this will be
yeah,
the last
very
thing, and then
random.
we're gonna end. All right.
I said this in the Slack channel, and Jeff told me to bring it up. I almost forgot to. But I actually had shingles when I was like 7 years old,
Oh,
and
seriously?
yeah, I have the scars like right above
Oh,
my
damn.
eyebrow on the side here.
Oh, yeah, because it's a form of chicken pox.
Yeah, and my aunt, she gave me chicken pox when I was an infant. I was like 6 months old, and I guess because of that, I progressed to getting shingles. I was out for like 2 weeks from school. My eye started to like come down like this. It was intense.
Wow.
Yeah,
Oh,
but
damn.
I heard it's rare to get it when but it's mostly like something that you get when you're older.
Yeah,
But it
yeah,
was
yeah.
interesting to know Jeff's mom got it, and I got it at a young
But
age.
wait,
So
but they diagnosed it as shingles and
they,
not chicken pox. It's a similar virus, right? It's the same.
yeah,
Yeah,
because I had chicken pox when I was an infant.
yeah,
I
yeah.
was like six
Okay.
months old. My aunt gave it to me. And so
All
they
right.
think because I got it as an infant that somehow when I was 7 years old, I got it.
Yeah, I think both of the viruses are within the same family, and generally, if you get chickenpox at a young age, you have a higher chance of getting
Yeah.
shingles. However, and that's why I think the vaccine isn't available for most people, especially through insurance, until you're around retirement age. And I think it's because if you got a chickenpox vaccine when you were younger, that for the most part will still protect you. It's not 100%. But for the most part, it will protect you up until you're a little bit older. And then I think they've actually reduced it a couple of years, like maybe 5 or 10 years recently. So you can get it at a younger age, because I think they're seeing that maybe the chickenpox vaccine isn't. And Michael just told me that it's preventable it's preventative, so you can get 2 doses, mostly on all insurance providers in the United States.
All right, listen.
After you hit that certain age and have other requirements.
Yeah, all right. I think I'm gonna go for it. Yeah, Dawn, I know, man. Everyone I have heard of people who get shingles, and it's horrific. So I'm like, what am I doing? Let me just go for it. All right, listen, I
was going to say during spring break, but you're not going to be in town.
Yeah.
So.
All right.
Soon.
Okay, everybody. Thanks, and be well. And hey, Lori and I are going to be on maybe on Monday. We're going to actually thinking about doing something on Monday morning. We were thinking about doing something in the morning to see if we can to switch it up a little bit. So I have a conversation I want to have with her.
Turn your YouTube notifications on. Make sure it's on, because I didn't know. I just stumbled across the YouTube.
Hit your bell.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, I will.
Yeah, hit
All right,
that
man.
bell.
Okay, and we're going to be streaming next Friday, it sounds like, with some new guests. So look forward to that. We'll make an announcement sometime next week on YouTube and all of our other channels.
Yeah.
So yeah.
All right. Cool. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Cool.